This is right.
I'll be in touch.
That's exactly.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This meeting is called to order. Trustee Smith is on his way. He's working in Helena, so he's on his way. He will be here when he can. Hopefully he'll drive safely and not get too excited about getting here in a timely fashion. And I think everybody else is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. Yeah, we're all here. Wow, great. Wonderful to see you all. Tonight I'd like to ask our vice chairs, Trustee Knapp and Trustee Sadler, to lead us in the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. That's right. Thank you, gentlemen. If you would take a quick look at the agenda, I'll entertain any suggestions to revise. Any requests to revise the agenda tonight? All right. Seeing none, we'll let it stand as it is then. Thank you. And we will review the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of June 12th? It's been moved by Trustee Holland and seconded by Trustee Sadler. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving them? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And now is there a motion to approve the minutes from the budget study session of May 15th? It has been moved by Trustee Lem and seconded by Trustee Knapp. Any revisions to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving them? Those are approved unanimously as well. We do have a little correspondence in our packet, and now we'll entertain public comment regarding non-agenda items. Melanie, are you with us this evening? Hi. Yes, she is. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you. Yes, I would. just hiding. Well, I'm having a little vision issue myself, so I'm not really quite seeing you either, so I'm just hiding. Melanie Charlson, President, Missoula Education Association. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the negotiation teams, both administration and from Missoula Education Association. We do have a tentative agreement, and Steve and I signed that agreement, I think, on June 26th, I believe. So my sincere thanks to Mark Thane and to Steve McHugh and to Pat McHugh and to Russ Lodge. They were just a very dynamic team. I think we had great dialogue and conversation throughout the process. I also want to extend my public thanks to our team for Missoula EA, which is Carla Getz as our lead negotiator. She's out of CS Porter. We had Gary Stein and Sue Fury from Sentinel, Christy Muir from Lewis and Clark, and then Mary Lyons from Franklin. So all worked really, really hard on our team as we finish. So just want to inform you that we will be doing the ratification vote on August 24th and the 27th when teachers return. And my reasoning for that is I do want to make sure that every one of our members has the opportunity to cast their vote in person. As you well know, many teachers are at school and work and gone for the summer doing a variety of activities. So I want everybody to have that opportunity. So I intend to have that finished and counted and with a positive count at the end of business on Monday the 27th before kids come on the 28th. So that's that particular update. I did just return from the National Education Association Representative Assembly in the record high city of heat of Washington, D.C. for a week, where there was a tremendous storm while I was there. It was all very exciting and very glad to be back to the dry heat, as it were. While I was there, we had the great opportunity to have Vice President Joe Biden came and spoke with us, as did his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. And they had great messages on, of course, campaigns coming up. And then actually on July 4th, President Barack Obama did a phone in. I was a little sad he didn't Skype in, but he phoned in and chatted with all 9,000 of us there. So again, giving us some reminders of what's coming. I also want to give you a little bit of an update of what teachers are doing. As you well know, many are working. Some have been to MBI training. Some are working on master's and advanced degrees. Some are at IB training, AP training. I just chatted with a kindergarten teacher, Mary Beth Jordanet from Hawthorne. She's down in Nevada at a kindergarten-only convention, and she's sending back all sorts of really fun, cool ideas. So they're out there doing a variety of activities. One activity you might not have well known about is that we're phone banking. Our MEA, MFT across the state, which includes Missoula EA and MMCEO, we are spending Tuesday and Wednesday evenings out of my offices here in Missoula phone banking all 18,000 of our members to really get them geared up for the fall. Because as we know, you are looking at very, very tight budgets. And those budgets won't get any less tight unless we have a little shift in Helena. So that's one of the aspects we're doing this summer as educators, is to educate our own members about what they can do to have things be a little bit smoother come November, hopefully, and then again in January when the legislature reconvenes. So a little bit of a summer update, and thanks again. And I hope that we have a positive approval from your voting on the contract as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Melanie. Thanks for all your hard work. We're thrilled, of course, to be where we are and look for all that to come to conclusion in August. I'd just like to congratulate you also on encouraging people to get involved in the political process, and we hope that everyone will vote in November.
Indeed. That's the plan.
Indeed. Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Happy summer. Just a couple things I wanted to hit. First of all, some of you may have heard this, Sentinel High School. I am Joe Fisher. I'm a teacher at Sentinel High School and also a taxpayer and a voter. Jeff Nord, who was a teacher at Sentinel High School for 34 years, retired. And Jeff was actually the very first AP teacher in Missoula County Schools way back in the day when it came in. And I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to teach alongside Jeff for 20 years. And what a great man, not only a great teacher, but truly one of the best people I have been around. And in true Jeff Nord fashion, I happened to be in my classroom on Sunday after school got out, and there was Jeff cleaning out his classroom a little bit too well. And he said, well, Joe, I'm going to go. He didn't want to make a big deal about it, but what a great man. And to the very end, just a outstanding member of Missoula County Schools, and a guy, if you get a chance to see him, it was a great thing to have an opportunity to teach with him. So I don't know what it's going to be like at Sentinel not having him there, because he seems like just part of everything. So Jeff Nord, I hope if he's watching, which I'm guessing he's not. I think he started teaching when he was 18 by the looks of him, when he said he had 34 years in. So Jeff, we're going to miss him. But again, a great example of the quality of teacher that we see at Missoula County Schools. And secondly, I had a little thought after the last meeting when we had that very interesting presentation from the teachers at Lewis and Clark, who went to the IB training. And it got me thinking a little bit that this may be a great opportunity to meld two of our district initiatives. And of course, one of the initiatives obviously is to focus towards IB, but also with Graduation Matters. It struck me that, Kevin Richland, who was our IB guy for so long, provided some very interesting research about Chicago and inner cities and how IB actually has helped lift a lot of those kids out of real desperate situations. And it made me think about Missoula County Schools, that maybe if we are going to go forward with IB at the younger level, maybe we should be looking at some of our schools that have more issues with socioeconomic status and other things. So obviously Lewis and Clark is a great school. Great teachers, has a certain dynamics and demographic, but perhaps we also need to, or our money would be better spent focusing at some of our schools in our district who have more issues, demographic issues. And I'm not forgetting that place way out there off, was it Highway 83? I think sometimes we neglect Sealy, and I think Sealy is a place too that we should think about, where again, the demographics there are up and down, and that could probably be a program that would be very helpful to a lot of folks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Is there any other public comment? All right, we will move ahead then. We do have an insurance trust fund report in our packet. We have committee reports, and minutes from those committees are included in our packet. We have a high school spring activities report. And now we'll move to items from trustees. Trustee Bixler.
Thank you. I'll take just a couple of minutes to give a brief summary of a meeting that I attended yesterday as part of the Transportation Board, and probably my summary will actually take a little bit longer than the meeting itself lasted. But we think a lot, take for granted a lot at how our kids get transported to and from school, and I got just a few little fast facts for you. We also like to think of Missoula County Public Schools as the #1 district in the county, and we are, but there are also 13 other districts if you count them all up. So think about all of those kids, all those different districts, all the logistics that happen to get our kids to and from school safely. It's amazing. For Missoula County Public Schools, we travel 3,226 miles every day. There's 1,532 miles in the high school district and 1,694 miles for the elementary. 1,532 for the elementary and 1,694 for the high school. Altogether in Missoula County, there are 5,863 miles driven every day by the people who transport our children back and forth. So we do a little bit of business every summer and approve those contracts with those providers, and I just want to thank every one of those people for all they do for us. And then I'd also like to echo what Mr. Fisher said, although I think he was a little bit understatement. I would refer to Jeff Nord as a legend. He really was. My son had the good fortune to have him for AP history, and my daughter had him for geography, and they both say that is the one class that will carry them through their secondary and post-secondary education. He taught how to learn and how to be a lifetime learner. So we will miss you, Mr. Nord, and thanks for all your work.
Thanks, Trustee Bixler. Other items from trustees. Mr. Sadler.
I recently read an article about why Germany is maintaining its position as a preeminent power in Europe, and that has a lot to do with its educational system and the emphasis on vocational training. They put a lot of effort into teaching their students practical trades and things that translate immediately into jobs upon graduation from high school. Now, you fast forward into our country, we still all think of our high schools as college prep with some vocational on the side. And there could be a reason why our economy is doing so poorly, is because we thought that the way to success was for us to send all of our students to, our children especially, to college so they'd all become professional and work in the service industries. Well, now we're finding those students have no jobs, and there's thousands of jobs in this country are going on not being able to meet in the practical arts, in things like welding and practical sciences and so forth. So as we plan as we go forward, we should take a look at why Germany is doing so well with their practical arts, and maybe we should be thinking about some of these programs here, because they're extremely important. The world has changed in front of us. I don't know if everybody's recognized it, but it's a different world.
Thank you, Trustee Sadler. Any other trustee comments? Trustee Toth.
Speaking of jobs, is a little segue here to the information that came out in the paper. A few of the others may have read this about when you have economic booms in certain areas, and I'm talking about Minot, North Dakota, and there was a recent article in the paper having to do with the teachers there. And why I'm bringing this up is that because sometimes talking about what Melanie so appropriately referenced here, about the legislature coming up in the perhaps changes that we all would like to see within our state. And one of the things that you see is that Minot can't get enough teachers, but one of the problems they're facing right now, because of the huge boom there, teachers can't afford to live there anymore. And they're caught in the same thing that we are sometimes in the state of Montana, in a structure of pay salaries where parallel professions outstrip that, therefore the cost of living goes up. The standard of teachers is already set by state legislature and contracts or whatnot, past practice and things of that such, therefore limiting them in what they want to try to increase teacher pay there right now, but there's even limitations on that. And so the teachers that are there, some of the same teachers that are there, even though they received a pay raise this last year, are basically because of the increase in the cost of living brought on by all that economic boom, are actually making less money this year because some of them, their rent has doubled, for instance, and things like that. So it just, and why I mentioned this as a reference point is just the whole idea of those sorts of things that sometimes restrict us in the state of Montana by salary schedules and in the state. And so there's a lot of influence that our legislatures can have besides just shifting money from a state budget over to education that we'd always like to see. But in sometimes the one of the things that we've always seemed to have been somewhat restricted on is a lot of the regulations and other things, some of them coming directly from state law, on our budgeting process and how we can spend money and those sorts of things. So all that kind of goes around in a circle to me to just bring to the fact that, I encourage all of us locally to stay aware of the things that we can influence on our legislatures, not only on a budget sense, but on things having to do with rules and regulations that can make us more flexible and providing opportunities for our wonderful staff that we already have in Missoula. What they were just talking about, the retiree from Sentinel, and how we had such fortune in Missoula to have that sort of staff here, and I just hope we can keep that up. So anyway, just contact your legislature. Remember who to vote for.
Thank you, Trustee Toth. Other comments from trustees? Yes, Dr. Knapp.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Rabine. Just to follow up on a couple of comments that have been made about the citizen involvement in the process when it comes to elections, because they really do matter. We as a school board have 3 or 4 major obligations, and the major obligation, one of them among them, is to oversee the budget. Our budget is not determined locally, it's determined in Helena, and we are literally at the mercy of decisions made by the legislature when it comes to deciding what to do. We have to be stewards of that budget, but what we're stewards of is not determined by us, it's determined by the legislature. So the importance, it can't be emphasized highly enough, the importance of active involvement by the citizenry in the legislative process and determining who those legislators are, what their priorities are. And I think it's important, we're still early in the process, but we are at a point where it's important to start thinking about the where people's values lie and priorities lie when it comes to the budgeting process. So I encourage those who are listening, the 2 or 3 of you out there who might be, that you really do take to heart the importance of what's going to occur in November, because it really will determine what dollars we have to devote and to distribute for the education of our students.
Thank you, Dr. Knapp. Other trustee comments? Okay, I'd like to make a comment or two. First of all, I'd like to thank Trustee Knapp for stepping in for me in the past month when I was gone. I know that he sort of had more than regular duty, and I'm sure the whole board appreciates that, and I appreciate that. And Trustee Sadler often steps in when I'm away too, and just like to thank you for doing that. I'm glad you didn't have the duty that Dr. Knapp had this time, so that worked out well for you. Anyway, thanks. It's great to have the team camaraderie that we have on this board. I also have to say that since I've been away, it just came as a shock to me to hear that Mr. Nord retired. And I have to comment, in addition to Trustee Bixler, on the legend that this man has been and the lives that he has changed. My daughter being one of them, who absolutely reveres the man, never worked harder in her life, and is so proud, so incredibly proud of that A. And one of her best friends who lost her 4-point to Mr. Nord, who loves him and reveres him just as much, and says, he is the person who I can credit with feeling confident to go on to one of the top schools in our nation and know I'll do well. We don't have people like that around in great numbers, and it's just sort of sad to think that he has moved on, but he certainly has changed many, many lives of students in Missoula and Sentinel students. So, Mr. Nord, hats off to you, and thank you for all that you have done for so many students and for so many years. Okay, anything else? I get kind of emotional about that guy. He's pretty special. Okay, then we will move on to finance and on to item 6D. To approve the reform of the beach transportation agreement, and the administration recommends that we grant permission to reform the agreement with beach transportation to limit the number of snow days to 1, and they recommend that we grant permission to compensate beach transportation in the amount of $12,796.55 for the snow day on January 20th, 2012. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Trustee Bixler, seconded by Trustee Knapp. Is there board discussion? No. Is there public comment? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion? That's approved unanimously, thank you. And we will move on to item E, to award the bid for Enterprise Resource Planning Financial System. There's a great deal of information about this in our packet. The committee supports the administration's recommendation that we grant permission to award the bid for Enterprise Resource Planning Financial System to Tyler Technology and to contract with Tyler for implementation maintenance services. And is there a motion to approve that? It's moved by Trustee Holland. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Dupree. Trustees, does anybody have any questions or comments about this motion or any of the information that's in our packet? Trustee Knapp.
Yeah, I wonder if you could have Pat McHugh just kind of speak to this at some length about what this particular fairly sizable investment is going to replace and what it's going to allow us to do that we can't do at the present time, or at least can't do as efficiently at the present time.
You bet. We had at our Finance and Operations Committee a number of folks that were here that either participated in the selection process or participated in a number of the demonstrations who talked about this system. This system will replace 3 of our separate standalone systems that we have now, the HR, payroll, and financial software systems. And it's replaced with an integrated single system. And what that means is that the system works with one database, one point of entry, one means of accessing and extracting data that's performed now through 2 legacy systems. These are essentially COBOL systems, and you pretty much have to be a programmer to pull data out of these, the payroll and the financial accounting system software. This type of system, it's called an Enterprise Resource Planning System. Right now, we're the only AA district in the state that doesn't have this type of integrated system, and there's a large number of A and B schools that also have it. What it should do, one, it'll be a system that we should have in place for the foreseeable future without any need to replace it. The system is provided by Tyler Technologies. They've been in business for 30 years. They provide the greatest number of government public school systems with their acquisition of CSA. And for us, that means a long history. It also means that for their initial customer 20 plus years ago, they provide free updates, free upgrades. And right now, in comparison, the two systems we have, the payroll system and the Keystone system, are not very well supported, and they need to be replaced. One's 14 years old, the other is 12 plus years old. And our HR system is manned by 2 staff people. And so this system is a collection of 21 modules that will ultimately, after our 18-month implementation process, this is a very involved process, it'll create some efficiencies. And certainly on the inputting of data, but also on the extraction of data and the transaction of business. And that's its entire purpose, is to create efficiencies, to make data accessible and usable. I think a couple of the modules that I'd point out are the employee self-service module that allows employees to go online and access and change information for withholdings. It goes on, they can do electronically their leave forms, and they can review copies of pay stubs. So it's also becomes more of a paperless system. I wouldn't call it a pure paperless system, but right now we operate with carbon forms for leave and for a variety of other things that we will no longer do. The content manager system is part of that, and what that system does is any document created within this environment is automatically copied and preserved within the hardware within the server of the accounting system. So, for instance, we generate purchase orders, we generate requisitions for purchase orders, we pay with checks in response to invoices. All of that becomes accessible electronically and can be reviewed either by vendors electronically or by us electronically, and instead of in file cabinets with drawers and reams of paper. And so this sort of access and accessibility is embedded throughout this type of system. It's really a big move. I mean, we recognize it as being a big step, but it should be something that we'll not regret. Although I'm a little anxious about the implementation, it's going to be heavily involved, from what I understand.
Okay, great. Trustee Dirk.
Yeah, just questions about how long before this new software system is obsolete. How many years of use can we expect to get out of this new system?
The one we're acquiring?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's promoted as the last system we'll buy. And we know from references that there are school districts that have been on it 20 plus years. And so I look at it as the last one we will buy. And it's a pretty sizable investment, but if we broke down any of these modules into purchasing as standalones, it's going to cost this close to the same amount, and it's not going to perform at the same integrated level. And I know that the payroll system has to be replaced, and the financial system has to be replaced.
Sorry, just one follow-up. Mr. McHugh, I anticipate you'll have longer institutional memory than I will in terms of your involvement with the district. How many years do we need to have this software function in order for this to be a prudent financial decision?
Yeah, good question. Just in relative comparison to the other system that was bid, and I'll start there, in 4 years this system will be more affordable and pay for itself within that 4 year period of time. What I mean by that is the other system which is was acquired by Tyler, and that system was really, I think it's in about 30 plus school districts in the state of Montana. Less of a upfront cost, but more of an annual cost. In terms of the payback, and I hesitate to go there entirely on an efficiency basis, but right now we have 3 servers. We'll go down to 1 from a hardware standpoint. We have 3 to 5 points of entry of the same data, and we'll eventually get back to 1 or 2 points of entry and a sole source, single source of data. And then just from the replacement of standalone software systems, smaller districts have software that wouldn't work in our district. It just doesn't, it's not going to function in a AA district. So it's almost difficult to say we could go with 3 separate pieces, payroll, HR, and accounting, just because those standalone systems, like the one we have now for payroll, are mom and pop shops, and the HR system, which isn't that old, has 1 to 2 people supporting it, and it's not terribly well supported, from what I understand. So I just don't think that there is another option. I think that this is something that will see dividends within the next 10 years in terms of increased efficiencies. And I know that the payroll office, we've got 90% of our funds going through that office right now, and they're anxious. And part of that anxiety is that the owner retired, sold the company. He was a primary supporter. And then we recently learned that the main tech support guy is leaving. That company is converting to a utility billing company. So we're the only payroll system that they're supporting. So
I just wanted to bookmark, it sounded like in 4 years, this will pay for itself. It's supposed to be the last system we'll ever need, won't go obsolete, but the last time I heard that about any device, I didn't believe it. So we have to make it work 4 years, shoot for 10.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
It better be in place when I retire 30 years from now.
For those of you with memories longer than mine, or longer than a 4-year term on the board, we only have 3-year terms. We've got to keep that in mind. Thanks.
And one thing we talked about, I'll just add, that Marcia suggested, is that we provide some ongoing updates of where we're at in the conversion to this system. I think it's going to be involved, interesting, entertaining, a little frustrating, but we're going to do that as we go along. Just provide some updates to F&O and see how it goes.
Great. Dr. Apostle?
Yes. I would just like to mention, too, that, like Trustee Sadler indicated, the world is changing, and it sure has changed for public education and the way we do business, not only in the classroom, but in terms of our infrastructure. And the company that we're dealing with, I think what really impressed me is that they will continue to upgrade and maintain the system, and I think that's a huge feature. The other is that in the 18-month transition period, that's going to be spent on training our staff and making sure that our staff are well acquainted before we completely transition to a new system. But it's consistent to move in this direction as it relates to the 21st century that we're in. And quite frankly, we're behind. There are districts much smaller than us that have an infrastructure that's much more advanced. And so we've kind of prolonged this as long as we could, and I think it's just prudent that we move forward.
Thank you. Trustee Sadler and then Trustee Knapp.
I was just looking at the summary of adjustments to the budget, and I don't see where there is an addition or a subtraction for this. Does that mean it was in some other budget?
It does, yeah. It's in the data warehouse or computer center fund, and this fund was established. It's an internal service fund, much like our warehouse fund or our computer network or PC tech internal service fund, the warehouse, and so the computer center fund has accumulated over a number of years with transfers or contributions from the general fund for the purpose of replacing hardware. And when it was originally set up, it was initially set up to replace these types of accounting systems, and also the mainframe computer, and also any servers. So that fund can only accumulate, it can't have an excessive accumulation, which it doesn't. It's accumulated to about $350,000, which we would exhaust for this purchase. So it does exist outside the general fund. It exists outside of those funds. It functions within its own separate computer center fund or data warehouse fund.
And can funds from there be transferred to the general fund?
No, because but what it can happen is that you can make purchases or offsetting purchases with those funds for the purpose for which it was set up. And here it would be computer type, equipment type purchases, which we've made out of that fund rather than through the general fund. So we've bought servers with that fund. And if not for that fund, we don't have another source of funds either to purchase servers or to purchase software systems like this.
So, for my understanding, that's $300 and some thousand has accumulated by over the past years. We have provided for line items in our general fund, which were for the computer, but were not expended.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, to dovetail upon Jim's comments there, this fund is now exhausted. Is it going to be replenished? And are there any opportunity costs for undertaking this? I understand the importance of this, but are we foregoing any other potentially important purchases or revisions because we're doing this?
Yeah, I guess I'd say to that question, sure, because there's always some other purchase, but not that would be of a greater priority from my standpoint. When we first looked at this purchase a year ago, we brought it through the tech steering committee, explained to them the accumulation of the fund or the funding source for making this purchase. Also explained the reasoning why in terms of the legacy systems in place. And so, I think that this is the perfect use of these funds. And really, my predecessor was wise in setting this up years ago. Right now, it was about 3 years ago, we reduced the amount of the contribution from the general fund. I believe as a 20, we reduced it to 12 3 budget cycles ago. But I can find that out. So there's still a line item of about $10,000 contributed to the computer center fund.
That's yearly? That's
yearly.
Annual?
Yep.
Other questions, comments? Trustee Bixler.
Unfortunately, having a lot of experience with legacy programs, things don't always go as smoothly as possible as you would like, and we're talking about an 18-month implementation schedule. Are we going to be running parallel systems with our current system the entire time, or is it going to be how are we going to integrate the new system into our daily work life?
Yeah, good question. We're going to sort of leapfrog the transition or the implementation. So the financial system, once we finally close out year end, that would be the first system we would convert. And we would run parallels throughout the year in the accounting financial system. The HR system, we would time the conversion and the implementation of that system to meet with their demands because they have a high demand period of time in the fall. So it'd be more in the winter time when we'd convert that system. And then the payroll system, we would look at converting after the first of the year in February, because in January we have, W-2s, and so we need to finish there, and then we'll run parallels for at least 3 months of the payroll system. So this fiscal year will be the end of all 3 of those systems, and this system is free the first year, so we don't have any overlapping costs for maintenance of those systems. So the maintenance is about a wash. We spend about 41,000 or 40,000 right now on those existing systems, and we'll spend about 45 on the new system. So that was appealing too. We've already have that built into our existing tech budget to cover those costs, those maintenance costs, and it doesn't go up. So we'll be running parallels at least in 3-month increments for all 3 of those systems. And the implementation, it's an interesting system because it's not just converting or adding software to a server. It's a lot of the cost, as Dr. Apostle pointed out, is in the form of training and evaluation of your existing systems. So you go from a as is to be evaluation in terms of workflow. And the workflow is, I mean, that process is fully intended to realize efficiencies. And so that's what is a lot of the time involvement is that as is to be type of training for how do you do it now, how can we do it more efficiently with this system.
Other questions, comments? Dr. Apostle, did you? All right, then. We have a seconded motion on the floor. If there's no further board discussion, we'll move to public comment. All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving this motion? And that passes unanimously. Thanks for that explanation, Mr. McHugh. Mm-hmm. All right, and we'll move on to G to approve the increase in high school ticket prices and activity cards. The committee supports the administration's recommendation that trustees approve an increase in the high school ticket prices and student activity cards. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Trustee Toth, seconded by Trustee Wills. Board discussion. Trustee Bixler.
I believe somewhere in our packet it talked about when these fees were last increased, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Pat or Steve, whomever?
You know, I know Mark does. I think it was
Approximately 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Other board comments, questions? All right, is there any public comment? All right, all those in favor of approving the motion to increase the high school ticket prices? That is, yes, that passes unanimously. Thank you. And on to H, to approve the right-of-way easement request by Missoula County to cross MCPS property at Sealy Swan High School to access new Sealy Lake sewage treatment plant. And the administration supports the construction of this long-awaited sewage treatment plant for the Sealy community. The committee supports the administration's recommendation that we approve the right-of-way easement. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Trustee Dupree and seconded by Trustee Knapp. Board discussion, board comment. Trustee Bixler.
Just one real quick comment. I'd like to thank Scott Reed. Thank you very much for including that language for the reversionary clause. I think that protects our interests in case something does go wrong. When we're talking 50, 100 years down the line, you never know what's going on. So thank you for negotiating that.
Further board discussion. Debbie's smiling broadly. All right, is there public comment? All in favor of approving the motion? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And on to personnel negotiations and policy. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report? Moved by Trustee Toth, seconded by Trustee Wills. We do not take comment on this, so all in favor of approving the personnel report? That is approved unanimously. And we will now move to the consent agenda. Feels like I missed something here. Did I? You guys paying attention? Okay. Yeah, right. All right, the consent agenda, we have finance items to approve out-of-district attendance agreements, approve claims and extracurricular reports, approve grant application summaries that are listed. We have many this month. and to approve an agreement with the election office for the 2013 school election. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Trustee Smith. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Holland. Is there public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? No. Deb, are you? Okay, so that is 10 yeses. Anybody opposed to the consent agenda? Yes, there's one opposed. All right. And the consent agenda is approved with that vote. Superintendent's report, Dr. Apostle.
Just a few announcements. Missoula County Public Schools administration and school summer hours are Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Those are 10-hour days, and Friday as a vacation day. This is the 4th year that we've been involved in that summer schedule. Finance and Operations Committee meeting Wednesday, July 18th, 2012, 12 p.m. here in the Business Building Boardroom. Public budget hearing Tuesday, August 14th, 5 o'clock p.m. here in the boardroom. Regular board meeting Tuesday, August 14th, 6 o'clock here in the boardroom. Finance and Operations Committee meeting Wednesday, August 15th at 12 p.m. There may be a change there, so stay tuned on that, but that's where we are at this time. So that's Wednesday, August 15th at 12 noon for Finance and Operations Committee meeting. Start of the school year celebration, there will be a barbecue. Everyone is invited. All staff is invited, and the board, of course, Monday, August 27th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and that will be at Sentinel High School, just like we had it last year. Personnel Negotiations and Policy Committee meeting Wednesday, August 29th at 12 p.m. here in the, actually in the Administration Building, Room 14. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Apostle. We have no old business tonight, but we do have new business. Preliminary approval of proposed secondary budget additions and reductions. The administration recommends that we review and provide preliminary approval of the proposed secondary budget additions and reductions, pending final approval on, at our August board meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Dr. Knapp. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Holland. Is there board discussion? Trustee Sadler.
The comment I have is on the, I probably just needs explanation. That's the IEFA restructure. The last time I remember seeing this figure, it was like 50,000. Now it's 114. And according to the sheet showing where the money was, it appears that a certified teacher has been added. Is that what's going on?
It's different than what it reflected last time, you're correct. The, if you look on page 156, maybe I'll just... If you look halfway down the page, it identifies positions previously paid for with Title VII, and that position was, that certified teacher position was paid for with Title VII last year and at least the 4 years prior to that. So this restructure, when it was originally identified, if you look at, again, below the line there, it shows positions previously paid for with Indian Ed for All one-time only funds. These are the positions, about $103,000. They were identified to me as needing to be built into the general fund because they are either paid for with the one-time only funds or paid for, well, all these were paid for last year with one-time only funds. So these were the original positions built into the general fund, and it amounted to about 53,000 one way and 57,000 the other way. The restructure changed from just building these into the budget to here's where we want people to land within that department. And so when that was identified for me, and it was given to me on the 26th when we had our budget study session, I just never had a chance or an opportunity to see what that looked like. I guess it looked like the same amount, but when I pulled into and put the positions in elementary and high school, the effect of where they wanted those positions to be is that the elementary looks at a positive budget reduction because there was already budgeted in the elementary 85,000, and then the high school looked at an obligation of 114,000, which before is about $57,000.
Right.
And I'm not sure, Mark, if you wanted to add anything to the restructure or any.
No, I would just reemphasize the point that you made, and that is that when you look position by position where they're assigned, they are largely high school staff members. And so when you apply them to the appropriate budget, instead of using 55-45 split, then the costs shake out as back as distributed in the budget. I think that, and I may be overstating it here, that the net effect, though, is that impacts then the interlocal agreement because of the change in budgetary figures, the bottom line between the two districts.
No, that's absolutely correct.
So we're not using the interlocal at this time.
No, that's right.
Interesting. Okay, now, my question has to do with, these are Native American specialists, and I was told the last time when we were in some kind of a committee or a discussion of, I raised the alarm that I thought we had very few Native American teachers, and I was told by by our personnel office that because of rules and regulations, that we could not specifically recruit for Native American teachers. However, would all of these people here be underneath the same rules, or because they're Native American specialists, does that mean that they are Native American, or just anybody fulfilling that job?
Mr. McKee, would you?
There is one that's not Native American. The certified teacher is non-Native. The rest of them are Native.
And the certified teacher, what would that teacher be doing?
I think she works more in the high schools than anything.
She teaches a Native American Studies course at Big Sky and Columbia.
Okay, I know who that is. Yeah. Mhm. Well, I'm not opposed to any of that. It's just that I guess I'm just going to use this time to say that I think we in order to truly come into the 21st century with our employment practices and so forth, that we should be doing more to employ Native American teachers. There's nothing better than having staff who's there to fulfill all the questions and so forth that anybody would have. And I was told by somebody that if you want to go trout fishing, you don't go to McCormick Park and expect to find trout. If you want to find Native American teachers, you go to areas in which you will find Native American teachers. And that's where you put your recruiting. I mean, you don't have to have a requirement that they're Native American, but if you do your recruiting in areas where they normally congregate or employed or educated, you would have them. We have a large minority population in our school system, and we really are not doing enough to bring on people in these minority statuses to be teachers. So I'm hoping that through discussion and by bringing the subject forward and we start talking about it publicly, that something can be done for it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Sadler. Dr. Apostle.
Thank you, Trustee Rayvine. I couldn't agree more, Trustee Sadler, that we need to do more than we ever have before to make sure that our staff across the board, not just certified, but across the board, really mirrors our student population and our community. There's no question we need to do more. In fact, I've talked with Steve McHugh about the importance as we develop the next strategic plan for our school district, that must become part of the strategic plan. So there's no disagreement. We're together.
Is there further board discussion on this item? Dr. Knapp and then Trustee Bixler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sadler, for your position and your consistency in this whole area, because I think it's quite important. You know, I recall we've had a number of discussions at this board level and probably more so in the committee levels about the importance of mentoring of our kids, and especially the importance early on in their educational time in our district, whether it's as freshmen in the schools or when they go into middle school. And that mentoring applies to all of our students, regardless of their heritage, class, et cetera. And so I think it's really important to establish a mentoring as much as we possibly can. And for students who do come from minority situations, the ability to be mentored by people with whom you have a cultural heritage, I think, is extraordinarily important. That's not only from teachers. I think that whether it's the janitorial staff, the athletic staff, you name it, it's important for all of those individuals to be involved in the mentoring of our kids in and out of the classroom. And I think that in order to really accomplish what I believe Indian Education for All was meant to accomplish, which is for all, that mentoring really needs to be front and center obvious. And so to the extent that we can be compliant with whatever employment requirements there are, I think having the availability of appropriate mentors for appropriate students, this falls smack dab into that kind of demand that we've made upon ourselves. So I really thank you, Mr. Sadler, for keeping this at the front end of the scene, and I really encourage our administration to take this really, really to heart, because I think it's an important issue.
Thank you. I realize that when we have these discussions, we're kind of at the 30,000-foot level on the budget, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask a question about what was in our packet today about the Seeley Swan music teacher position and the reduction in the FTE. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of that, what that really means to the music department and what's going on. So I'm not sure who would want to address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. It's an enrollment issue. In the past 2 years, we've had 4 sections of music available at Seeley Swan High School with a total enrollment of students of 28 students in those 4 classes. And Seeley Swan principal came to me and said she needed to add a section of English and a section of social studies in order to maintain accreditation standards and keep those class sizes under 30 for one class. So knowing our budget constraints, I suggested that we needed to make some adjustments to the schedule at Seeley within our current FTE. And it was determined that there was less of a need for music classes and more of a need for an English section and a social studies section.
So basically what you're saying is that we were not accredited in to meet.
We would be over accreditation standards. So essentially, the English teacher would be teaching 125 students, and the social studies teacher would be teaching classes of 32 to 34 students per section, as opposed to the 30 limit based on accreditation.
By accreditation. Thank you.
Further board comment? Could I ask a follow-up to Trustee Bixler's point? Are there any students who will not have access to music as a result of the change?
No. In fact, all of those students will still have access. There will be a choir class available as well as a band class available. And thanks to a generous donation by the Liz Claiborne Foundation, we're actually able to add a 3rd section so that that position will stay at halftime. We'll have 3 sections of music instead of the 4 that we used to have or the 2 that we were planning on having. And it also allows us to add an additional section of art.
So we're going to be able to add a section of visual arts.
All right, thank you very much. Trustee Dirk.
Just a clarification, sorry if I missed the explanation. So the school at this point is at risk of losing accreditation unless this change is made?
Correct.
Okay, so,
Or we find money somewhere else in the budget to add additional. It's very difficult in Sealy.
that's like bleeding a rock at this point. So I just wanted to be clear, the district is up against the wall in terms of losing its accreditation without this change. Thank you.
Further board discussion. Heather, can you tell us what kind of communication has been made to the numerous parents who have signed the petition?
You know, I haven't personally made any communication, but no parents actually contacted me. No parents of current students contacted me about this issue. It was members of the Alpine Artisans Group that contacted me, and I talked to each one of them personally when they contacted me.
All right, thank you very much. Any other board discussion? Dr. Knapp.
Thank you, Chairman Rabine. The budget has, we've had a number of budget study sessions over the last 6 months looking at the budget crunch that we're facing and some of the expectations of manpower shifts and manpower cuts, especially at the high school levels. If one looks at the budget, you know, there was an ask of the high schools to come up with between the three of them over $500,000 in savings of some fashion or another. And given the reality of where we spend our money, which is 90% of it on salaries and benefits, that was going to directly impact positions, many of which were in the classified staff. And I wonder if we can talk about that and what this present budget is going, as it's presently proposed. I see there have been some changes in that. If we can have a formal update on where we are with that, number one. Second thing was, because the elementary budget and the secondary budget are indeed separate, although we combine them oftentimes in our discussions, there was, up until very recently, an agreement or an intent to move money from the secondary budget into the elementary budget. Can we talk also about where that is at the present time, given this potential budget structure? Can you address those, please, Dr. Postle?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that we're very fortunate in the Missoula County Public Schools in terms of our budget development process. Number one, we've provided compensation to all staff in the most difficult economic times. We have met, at this point in time, all accreditation standards, and if you read the news, some school districts are not as fortunate. In a particular school district, there are 160 classrooms or classes that are above accreditation standards, and that particular school district now needs to deal with the state. So I'm very happy with the fact that for, at least during my tenure, we have always met accreditation standards in all classes across the board. We've had, I think, 1 or 2 deviations, but overall, we've met accreditation standards. Thirdly, we are continuing to move our school district in a direction that will meet the needs of our students in the 21st century. And through the efforts of our staff, the creativity and innovation of our staff, and the support of our community, I can honestly say to you, we are in great shape. We could be a lot worse, let's put it that way. So I think, Trustee Knapp, I think it's very important that we share with you the fine efforts of many people in our district to, number one, balance the budget and keep our district moving in the right direction. So on that, I would like for Pat to go through very specifically the entire budget process so that the board will understand the good work and the positive direction that this district is going. So Pat, could you go ahead?
tonight. I'm going to start on this page of the handout, or I'll try and sit down. The page 153, and you have it in your packet. It's attached to the agenda, and you've seen it. So I won't belabor any of the points unless you want to delve into it a little bit deeper. But I think that Dr. Knapp's comments earlier are certainly apropos. If you look on page 153, we don't control that. Our anticipated increase in the general fund is $5,500, and that is a function of two primary variables, one being what the state legislature decides is appropriate for an inflationary adjustment to two factors, the per entitlement and the basic entitlement, per A and B and basic, and then our enrollment. And so the bump in the secondary side is $5,500, which we have no control over. It is what it is. It's per the formula. And fortunately, we don't have to levy to have a $5,500 increase. Looking at the budgetary additions, and as Jim pointed out, there's some changes, and as you guys know, the budgeting process is fairly fluid. We have retirees that happen throughout the process, and those retirees positively impact our budget from the standpoint that we count a retiree that's replaced as a $20,000 budgetary savings, and that's tied directly to prior year numbers in terms of positions that were retired and filled, and the salaries that each was paid. So on the secondary side, the budgetary additions, these are increases in expenditures. You'll see that we have the certified salary increase. This is the steps and lanes and the 2% negotiated increase. Classified pay increase, this is the steps, 25 cents per cell plus a differential that was negotiated. The increase in district contribution to health insurance, only $13 of this per month per employee is new. 25 was bargained last year, 14 of it was one time only, and 11 was paid with one time only to become permanent this year. We made all of it permanent, all of the 25 from last year, and added 13 to it. So that's your cost to that health insurance contribution. Offsetting the general fund obligation for that $207,196 is a contribution of one-time only funds, or otherwise known as soft money funds, to help soften the blow of that obligation and to help balance. This was a directed effort. We had available year-end funds that we used to restore some of the soft money funds that we used last year to settle our contracts. Last year we set aside in indirect funds and work comp credit $329,000 to cover the insurance contribution and to pay $300 stipend to trades and crafts and exempt, and $300 stipend to certain certified positions. So that offsets that cost. Trades and crafts pay increase at 1.5%, exempt salary increase at 1.5%, and then admin and supervisor at 1.5% are both reflected there. And then the Indian Ed for All restructure that Jim alluded to at a cost of $114,000 in the high school. Previously, that was a $52,500 cost. Next item is under fixed. There are no increases to the budget for fixed obligations. Instructional, the increase is offset by a corresponding expenditure reduction in the form of a donation that'll cover that cost for next year. That's the IB diploma program. $50,000 will be built into the budget, but will be covered by an expenditure offset from a donation. So its net effect is zero. That leaves a $921,000, $921,000 obligation, increased obligation to the budget that we only have to look for within the budget itself or through what we accomplished up here in the terms of the one-time only contribution. So we do that in the form of budgetary reductions. These are decreases in expenditures. As I said before, we have retirees, and here we reflect 8. Previous to that, we reflected 7, so we had 1 more between last time we met and now. The reduction in certified compensation for hourly stipend work, $65,500. When we negotiated from 1.5% to 2% with the certified staff, it was with a commitment for 8 hours of time from our certified staff during the year, all certified staff. So we took a direct reduction here of $65,500 to the budget set aside for extra pay that we pay to certified staff for hourly and stipend work. And that'll be managed prior to the beginning of the school year. The reduction, $175,000 by each urban high school, $525,000. You'll see that amount is no longer $175,000, and the ERDs will get into that as a slide that we present here in a second. Professional development coordinator, that's a reduction of that position. The warehouse restructure, that's through attrition, that's an elimination of that position. An adjustment to reflect the actual cost of lanes. This was, we estimate lanes, we don't know what the certified movement across the salary schedule for them is until September when they submit credits, the deadline September 11th. District receptionist position that was eliminated, duties being picked up by other staff. Elimination of administrative position, the creativity, innovation, technology position. And then a reduction of the work comp budget, and here this is very much a factor of up to 5 years of very good records of risk and exposure, and so we've got a fairly sizable reduction both elementary and high school for the work comp budget. In total, $974,000 of budgetary reductions, along with $8,600 for the copier and a reduction in textbook budget of $100,000, puts us as a positive $161,147. And as we mentioned last time, we recommend restoring the 3 equipment managers, partially to be paid for with this. About $18,000 per equipment manager will be covered here. The other 12 would be covered by each of the schools as a part of that increase in the gate receipts. And then 3 custodians, 1 at each of the high schools would be restored. So those classified positions would all be restored, and we'd still be at the positive $8,100 in the high school. And maybe I could put up these are the revised reductions by school, and maybe each of the ERDs could just talk about that, unless there are questions about what I just went over.
Yeah, Pat, question about the textbook $100,000 that kind of just shows up. What are we foregoing? What's potentially being impacted by that money being shifted to this particular important line?
And I might have Mark talk to this a little bit, but this was a reduction item that we put on the table pretty early on in the process when our budget picture looked bleak, and it has been. The textbooks and materials have historically been purchased either through the minimal allocation of budget, and again, to your point, Joe, over the years when we've had budget, we've restored textbooks and materials as a line item, and then 2-3 years down the road, they come off the table again. And it's part of our effort to make budgetary reductions that are least impactful to programs and to positions and to the delivery of services. And so this will be covered through a reliance upon year-end funds availability to make these purchases. Mark, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's a good summary. You may recall that in the past couple budget cycles, all the textbook money, with the exception of a small amount for math consumable materials, was eliminated from the K-8 budget. So on the elementary side, we have relied solely on year-end dollars in order to make these purchases. We have had a little more than $100,000 left in the secondary budget. And again, because of the budget situation this year, we'll find that from this point forward, the secondary district will also rely on year-end dollars in order to make any curriculum material purchases. The downside to that is because the budgets have been so tight, Pat and each of the budget managers have been very, very careful in terms of their budgeting, and they've used historical figures in order to drive development of the budget, which means that the availability of year-end dollars has become increasingly difficult to sustain. So we are entering the math review cycle. The committee worked in early June, right after school was dismissed. We'll continue their work in August. They'll bring new curriculum recommendations to you next May. I suspect that with the possible exception of kindergarten and maybe some of the specific math courses in the high schools, we will not see recommendations for new math materials because we simply don't have a revenue stream to support it. We'll need to invest in professional development because of the alignment with the Common Core standards for math. We will probably need to have some supplementary materials, but we don't anticipate wholesale purchase of a new set of math materials as a result of that review.
Well, can I follow up? Getting down to the nuts and bolts of that, what does this really mean to the teachers when there's no availability or this extremely limited availability of dollars to purchase academic instructional materials?
Again, I think it depends on which particular discipline you happen to be addressing in a given year. We are required by accreditation standards to review each area of the curriculum in a 5-year cycle. We invested heavily in professional development for math education last time around, and Melanie, in fact, who snuck out, was one of the coaches that we sent away for specific training to Mount Holyoke College. They came back and really invested heavily in professional development through what we call DMI, Developing Mathematical Ideas. We feel as though we're still investing in that process. So with math, regardless of the financial picture, we would likely have wanted to stay the course with the exception of alignment with Common Core standards. If you were to look at a different discipline, whether it be one of the practical arts or whether it would be the social sciences, you might have a need to purchase primary source documents or current history textbooks that would reflect the developments that have occurred in the years since the previous adoption. So we'll need to evaluate this as we get to each different revision of the curriculum materials. So my hope, of course, is that we'll receive some help from the legislature and be able to begin restoring some of the curriculum textbook budget. But we recognize that we're going to need to be increasingly frugal. And again, as Pat said, we're largely dependent on year-end dollars. But again, we're using those year-end dollars to support, for example, settlement of the agreements. We're using one-time only monies. And so some of those year-end dollars need to be used to restore those soft money sources that are being applied to budget solutions. So we're walking a very fine line. As Dr. Apostle indicated, though, it's been a priority to meet accreditation standards, and we in this district have been very successful in that regard. And we'll continue both through initiatives that are reflected in class size, implementation of the 21st Century Initiative, and in our curriculum review process to be cognizant of the need to meet accreditation standards.
Right along with that, you know, when I first came to the district, we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on textbooks. Hundreds of thousands. I recall my first year, we spent over $500,000 on textbooks. And as we move our school district forward in terms of technology and other means to support our teachers, I'm hoping that the day comes that we will spend hardly anything on textbooks as we know them today. I've had discussions with Mark just recently, and we used end-of-the-year money to the tune of $130,000 to support elementary education. I can tell you this, that we will do everything that we can to make sure that our teachers have what they need to do their work. We will strive to support them in every way possible at all times, and that's been our philosophy for many, many years. So if there's a problem, if there's an issue with a particular program or a teacher or a department, when it comes to our attention, we deal with it. We find the money some way to make sure that our teachers have what they need to do their work.
Trustee Sadler.
I noticed that there's a, on the budgetary reductions, there's 175,000 reduction by each urban high school, see attached. And I've been looking for the attachment.
Go ahead and explain that.
We're going to explain it right now.
Okay.
It's right.
I was just, said it's see attached, I assumed it would be attached. Yeah.
Hook to your back.
Okay.
Okay, so up on the board there, you'll see Hellgate's recommended budget reductions. We now have listed up there 1 custodian instead of 2. And there's a library and media specialist who is going to retire in December. So that position will not be filled once that retirement takes place. There is a current opening of 1/3 time special ed position that will not be filled, a current opening of a half-time health enhancement teacher that will not be filled, and a current opening of a 3rd time English teacher that will not be filled. In addition, there are a few coaching positions, a football assistant coach, a track assistant coach, and an intramurals coach that will also not be filled.
Trustee Toth.
Just curious, does each individual school with their administration and their staff go through how to address this shortfall
Absolutely.
in each one individually? So this would be developed within the school themselves?
Absolutely, and I worked closely with Russ on this. Lisa, of course, has just come on board and has looked at it with me as well. We looked at the course requests, each of the course requests that the students input, as well as accreditation standards. We want to maintain, of course, all of our classrooms at 30 students. In science and English, we want to keep those classrooms at a limit of 24 students. In science, we only have lab space for 24 students, and English has a particularly high writing component, so we want to keep those class sizes lower, also to meet accreditation standards in that area. In addition, I went through and determined how many students needed to take what classes for high school course requirements, and also how many additional classes they would need to take for elective requirements in order to meet graduation requirements. Based on that, we were able to come up with these areas, in particular in the certified areas where we could reduce staff. We are at Hellgate High School, a very full school. There's a large student population, and so we are really maximizing those classrooms so that we can meet student needs to the best of our ability while also making the necessary budget reductions.
Just real quick, when we went through the summary of adjustments to budget for high schools, there was a reduction of $175,000 for each urban high school.
Correct.
Did the other high schools make up for Hellgate's
No,
deficit here?
originally, we, each of the urban high schools had 2 custodians and
Okay.
an equipment manager also on their list.
Right.
And you'll see at the bottom of that worksheet, we were able to fund those 2 positions in different ways. So the amount that each urban high school had to reduce was lessened by a lot, so.
Okay.
So it's only 112,000. You'll see we're a little bit off at Hellgate, but we have a little bit of discretionary money at Hellgate we can cover that with.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Pasa, would you like to address that question?
Well, I just want to mention, and I know the trustees are aware of this, but, you know, when you're dealing with a school budget in July, we all know it's very fluid at this time. I mean, until you really see how many kids come to school in the fall, or in the latter part of August, I should say, you know, there's going to be some adjustments, and we have the flexibility to be able to do that. We need that flexibility in order to meet program, in order to meet accreditation. You just can't pinpoint exactly at this time specifically how many sections even you might need at a high school. I mean, we may get an influx of kids that need more science or more math or more social studies. So we've left ourselves the opportunity to deal with those situations. But this is our best projection at this time as of July 10th. Mm-hmm. This is where we're at as of July 10th. It's close, but just keep in mind, which I know you are, that this could change to some degree down the road.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Thane.
I will be sitting in for Mrs. Allen tonight too, so I wanted to make sure I knew which slide was coming up. The Sentinel slide looks a little simpler. Again, as Heather indicated, previously 2 custodial positions were listed. Now it's a single position. There are 2 paraeducators listed. There's a .5 special education position listed, and as Heather had on the Hellgate list, there are 3 assistant coach stipends. And I would clarify that it is stipends because in many cases, football being an example, they'll take a single coach stipend, but they might have multiple coaches that split and share that stipend. So there will be some consolidation and reduction of staff, both in football and track, in order to reduce that stipend amount. You can see the bottom line for Sentinel listed at $114,000. To get to Trustee Dirk's question, previously at $175,000, we had a second custodian at $33,000 and the equipment manager at $30,000. So that $63,000 has effectively been reduced from the required reductions at the high school.
I see it now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You might also note, just as Heather described with Seeley Swan's music position, there are oftentimes the needs within our urban high schools to adjust the numbers of sections within given departments based on student requests and loads. Tonight we referenced earlier the retirement of Jeff Nord, and you'll see in your packet that the FTE represented by his position has actually been divided to meet other needs. There's been an increase in art FTE and an increase in English FTE. Prior to this, because of demand for math class, some additional FTE was moved into the math department. The same was true with science. So there is that flexibility. I would also indicate that if you look at the half-time special education position, that is an estimate of the salary. When we go through the budgeting process, we say the average teacher is a $47,000 teacher in the district. This teacher, who was a veteran that retired and only half the position is being filled, actually commanded a higher salary than that. We're again just taking the average for the district in terms of the reduction in the budget. So again, there is that flexibility within the numbers. I would also indicate that in order to meet the needs of the 21st century initiatives, and Sentinel has really emphasized their AP program, we have 3 teachers off at AP training this year. We're increasing the number of offerings and the number of sections of AP that are available at Sentinel. So there have been other shifts of staff FTE within that budget in order to accomplish that. Most of those are, again, staff neutral changes, but it may be moving FTE from one department to another in order to accomplish that. I believe the same is true with the IB program and with the Health Science Academy at Big Sky.
Questions, Dr. Knapp?
You know, I'm assuming if we didn't have these budget pushes, we wouldn't be eliminating some of these positions, and so they've got to have some kind of an impact. And I want you to talk about the impact of eliminating 2 paras out at Sentinel is going to be, just as an example, or the sure. Halftime special ed teacher. Tell me what the impact is going to be.
You know, it's actually an interesting discussion to have. If you look at the elementary side of the budget, and again, my experience for a number of years was on the elementary side, you could essentially say it was zero-based budgeting. We were allocated staff by the Human Resource Office directly dependent on the number of students that we had enrolled. So we would have reductions in FTE at grade levels routinely on the elementary side as long as we stayed within accreditation standards. An accreditation standard was our guide. We have not had that experience at the high school, and part of that is the size of the high school organism is just a different animal. And so that FTE has shifted more fluidly within the high schools than it does in an elementary, where a teacher might teach a specific grade level. What we're seeing right now is that the high school administration, in conjunction with their advisory committees, are needing to shave that FTE more and more closely every year, with the caveat being that they have to stay within accreditation standards in order to do that. As we see fluctuation in the special education population, and Sentinel has the largest special education population in the secondary district because they have the structured learning programs at Sentinel. Again, those enrollments drive our needs for staffing. So there are some corresponding reductions based on simple enrollment adjustments. And fortunately, we're able to meet most of our needs there. The custodial position is a little bit different because the square footage in Sentinel did not change over the summer, and all that building still needs to be cleaned. That will be impactful. As we discussed previously when we were talking about the reduction of the custodians and the reduction of the equipment managers, the concentric circle model came into play. The classroom was where we went to protect first and meet accreditation standards, and then we looked at the support services on the outer rings first. That's a difficult, bitter pill to swallow because it does impact people. It impacts the cleanliness, safety, etc. But again, we were preserving the accreditation standards more than anything. Sentinel will still meet all accreditation standards even with these reductions.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to give a follow-up. Let's talk specifically about the paraeducators and what the implications are. Again, thinking about, I guess my question is, it just strikes me that we would not be doing this. We would probably not have taken such a close look at these particular positions and say yes or no had we not been forced to do so. There may be some rationale for that maybe we've just been over generous with our manpower, but I doubt it to a great extent, quite honestly. And so tell me what the impact of eliminating 2 paras at Sentinel is going to be. Do we know that?
There will be an impact, but again, as you look at the reduction, there's also a half-time special education teacher reduction. Because of the implementation of response to intervention and such at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels, we are finding fewer referrals to special education. So our special education population in the district is actually being reduced somewhat. That reduction correspondingly means that we don't have to staff it at the levels that we did previously. There certainly will be reductions in services to students as a result of that. You'll have slightly larger class sizes. You may have to group students differently as they migrate from a special education environment into a regular education classroom if they need paraeducator support in order to facilitate success in that classroom. So there will definitely be impact. But they're working to mitigate the effects through use of all the resources they have available within the building presently.
Anybody else? Any questions? Comments? Okay.
Okay, I'll put on my Karen Allen hat. The cuts you see here, again, are very similar to what you've seen at the other schools. Again, because of restructuring and the changes in population, there's a special education staff reduction at Big Sky. There's a half-time health enhancement, physical education teacher reduction, and a 0.67 reduction of certified staff in the career and technical education areas. Part of that cut, you'll see that it's a very small amount attached to a 0.67 staffing cut. There are reallocations with the Health Science Academy and the restructure that's going on at Big Sky. There have been some retirements, and so there's only a partial credit being taken for that because, again, they need to reallocate staffing into other areas so that they can open the Health Science Academy in the fall. Those numbers, if we were to take the district average on the 0.67 FTE out of CTE, for example, they would far exceed the cuts that they need to make at Big Sky High School. They, however, need to have that budget authority retained so that they can continue to implement some of the changes that they're instituting with the academy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I should mention this on record, that the cuts that we're seeing this evening are difficult. No question about it. But in comparison to where we might be next year, unless the legislature steps up to the plate, this is nothing compared to where we might be. And we're going to be prepared to share that information in terms of projections with the board very, very soon. We're not going to wait to the last minute to really paint the picture in terms of what we might be facing unless, like it's been mentioned this evening, the legislature does their work for public education. We're very fortunate. No one wants anybody to lose jobs. In fact, in the last 4 years, we've done a very good job of maintaining staff. That's been a #1 priority, in fact. So I'm just kind of letting you know, even though these cuts are difficult, it's nothing compared to what we might have to do next year unless things change. There's just no question about it. But I'm very happy where we are today, and I'm going to enjoy the moment, but we're also going to be planning for the future. We're going to be planning, we're going to be looking down the road, and it's not going to be a surprise next year when we're discussing the budget. We will know early on what we are projecting based on historical information, based on our current revenues, where we're going to be at this time next year. And it's going to be difficult unless, again, the legislature understands that we cannot maintain program, we cannot maintain accreditation, we cannot continue to compensate people with our current funding. It just won't work. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And so enjoy and be happy today because things could get rougher in the future.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Trustee Wills.
As I was looking at this, what I didn't understand is I see what we're doing with the high school, but what about the elementary? I mean, I don't, there must be cuts and stuff going on in there too.
That's the next item on the agenda.
We can go through that.
That's the next item on the agenda. So we have a seconded motion on the floor for the secondary
Sorry.
budget. So do we have any other discussion on this? Trustee Bixler?
I guess just one thing is I'm a little bit disappointed in the participation by the audience tonight in this process. Dr. Apostle and Pat, so many people have dedicated so many hours to presenting this information time and time and time again to board members and to the public. This isn't a surprise. They have done a fantastic job of trying to make this as transparent as possible. If you're seeing this for the first time, it's not the fault of the administration. They have gone the extra mile in trying to get this information out, and the budget process has been as transparent as it ever has been. So, unfortunately, perhaps there are more than 2 people watching tonight, Joe, and hopefully they're all out there seeing what good work these people have done. On a little bit more positive note, I'd like to thank the administration for staying away from what we call sometimes the lifetime sports, tennis, golf, swimming. The dollars associated with those sports are so minuscule in relation to the number of participants and the credibility that we get in teaching our children what they need to do to have healthy lifestyles for the rest of their lives. Thank you so much for staying away from that. And then finally, when we do talk about potential reductions to the classified staff, the first thing that I always hear as a board member is what is happening in the administration? How come the administration never gets cut here? And unfortunately, sometimes it's kind of buried in there, but I know of 2 positions that are being set aside, and I don't know if Pat wants to talk about that or Alex just for a moment, and then another one that was mentioned tonight. So there is definitely those administrative cuts that come as well. So that's all I need to say on the high school. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Trustee Bixler. Dr. Apostle.
Trustee Bixler, let me just respond to your comments in terms of the number of people that are here. I believe that, strongly believe, and this has been my experience, is that the voters of this community elected this board, and they have great faith in you. And when a community has faith in its board, they're charging you to oversee the budget, to oversee how a district runs and performs. So it's a testimony to the board, I believe. If we were having problems, this boardroom would be packed. But you're right, we've done everything possible to reach out to the community in terms of letting them know what's happening in terms of the budget. But I believe they feel confident in the board in terms of making good decisions. They feel confident in the administration that we're going to do the very best for students and staff, as we have in the past and as we've done to this point. So again, it's just a trust issue. The community trusts the board to do their job and to do their work. And we have supported that by doing good work as an administration and as a staff.
Thank you, Dr. Postle. Any other questions or comments? All right, that will bring it into board discussion. We do have a seconded motion on the floor. Is there public comment? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion then to approve the secondary budget additions and reductions. That is approved unanimously. Thank you all. Great discussion. All right, and then we'll move to 11B, the preliminary approval of proposed elementary budgetary additions and reductions. The administration recommends that trustees review and provide preliminary approval of the proposed elementary budget. We will approve this on August 12th. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Trustee Bixler. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Toth. Board discussion. Trustee comments, questions?
Sure, happy to, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want
Pat,
me
would you like to run through?
Sure.
Trustees, is that your desire? I'm seeing some yeses, some nos. Yes, okay.
Okay. And this is, I'm going to jump to page 155, and this reflects the summary. It's the similar format to the high school. And like the high school, the factor of enrollment and inflationary increases to the entitlements plays a part here. The elementary has a better enrollment picture, and so we see an increase into the general fund budget here of $958,000. Again, this was without a levy, and of course we know we couldn't levy more if we wanted to. This is where our cap is at. Under budgetary additions, this is the increase in expenditures that we have to work with within that increase, and then subsequent decreases. The first is the increase in certified staff at 10, and as Mark pointed out, we look at an average general fund cost for a new hire certified staff person at $47,000. That's the salary plus health insurance benefits primarily. This is very much with the intent of maintaining accreditation in the district and serving the new kindergarten students that we anticipate in the fall. The certified salary increase, the steps and lanes, and 2% is shown here at $756,000. Classified pay increase, steps, and 25 cents per cell plus a differential. And then an increase in the district contribution to health insurance, like in the high school, the $38 per month, with the 13 being new this year as a contribution. Part of that cost is offset by the $99,850 of soft money funds, much like the high school. We've restored with year-end funds some soft money that was used last year to settle contracts and balance our budget, and we're using those again. These funds will appear next year on our general fund projections as a burden, as an obligation we'll have to meet next year. So it's very much deferring that cost to next year. And so we're using the tools we have to try and make this work, and that's what this is about. The trades and crafts increase at 1.5, the exempt salary increase at 1.5, and then admin and supervisors at 1.5 are reflected there. There's no additional expenditures for under fixed or under instructional. So after those increases in expenditures, we have $607,000 that we need to reduce within that same budget in order to balance. We have 13.8 retirees, and during our budget study session on the 26th, the packet showed 12.8. So like the high school, you have some fluidity to that where there's retirements that happen after the fact. The reduction here for certified compensation for hourly stipend work, this was to get the, or to reflect a reduction in budget to reflect the 8-hour commitment by our certified staff in settling the contract. And this will be a reduction to some of our budgeted line items for hourly and stipend work there. Here, this is new, as Jim was pointing out on the high school side. This had previously been reflected as a cost of $59,300, and here it turns into a savings based upon the Indian Ed for All restructure of staffing. We had budgeted $85,000, and based upon the staffing in the elementary, we only need $57,000, so there's a savings of $27,000 here, which leads to the elimination of the interlocal obligation as well. Middle school librarian, half-time FTE, professional development coordinator, that's the other half of the high school side. Portion of middle school principal salary covered by traffic ed, and that's a separate fund, the traffic ed program, and so that those funds are being used to help pay for this part of this salary based upon work that's being done on the traffic ed program by middle school principal. There's the adjustment to reflect actual lane costs, the other half of the district receptionist position, the other half of the CIT position, the administrative position was eliminated, and then the reduction to work comp budget on the elementary side. Along with maintaining our copier for an additional year, we just about balance it at a deficit of $4,700, and so between now and when we adopt budgets in August, well, that'll be a zero, but as far as a $32 million budget, we're right there.
Questions, comments? Dr. Apostle?
Thank you, Trustee Rabine. I just want to mention to the board that we have not concluded the negotiations with our trades and crafts. Is that correct, Steve?
That's correct.
Yeah, so this
Trades and crafts
and exempt. So that's where we are at this time, at 1.5, but we'll know more by tomorrow, hopefully. I just wanted to mention that to the board.
All right, any other comments, questions?
Well, also, don't forget administrators, too.
Right. Yeah, we're still discussing with them.
All right. Trustee Smith?
I just wanted to mention sort of what Scott had mentioned before, that looking at this $32 million budget and coming to within less than $5,000 is no small task, and I just wanted to thank everybody involved for all their hard work. It's really greatly appreciated, and it's nice to be able to be on this side, and as Dr. Apostle said, it's good so we can enjoy it for now. Thank you, guys.
Any other board comment? Any public comment? All right, all those who approve the motion. And you see K-12 trustees only are voting, and that's unanimously passed. All right. Thank you very much. At this time, we will enter into our second evaluation of Dr. Apostle for the year, or we evaluate him biannually, is that the right term? And I have determined that this is a personnel issue and that Dr. Apostle's right to privacy supersedes the public's right to know. So we will adjourn for 6 minutes while people say goodnight to each other, and the board, we will reconvene in 6 minutes in executive session.